Hi everyone, this is Sanjana from Mockat. Now in my previous video, hopefully I helped you figure out if you should do an MBA or not. And if you've decided that yes, an MBA is what you're going for, then here's how to get into IIMs. While there are a lot of top B schools and we are going to cover it in a later video, aside from IIMs, what are the other top B schools that we should target? So definitely subscribe if you haven't. But today's video is all about the IIMs and their process. So the first step is going to be the CAT exam. Now, once you've taken the CAT exam and you get the results where you will get your scores and percentiles overall as well as for each section, then the IIMs will shortlist you for the next round. This next round will typically consist of a VAT, which is a written ability test, and the personal interview. There's also one or two additional things which can come up, which we will cover. And then you have your final selection, which is as a result of your VAT PI scores. So let's understand a little bit more about the CAT exam. So the CAT exam has three sections: verbal ability and reading comprehension, data interpretation and logical reasoning, and quantitative aptitude. You will get 66 questions in 2 hours. Now bear in mind that this is the current format. This is the format that we've had for CAT 21, 22 and 23. There could be changes, maybe, plus or minus 2 questions, something like that. But this is what has consistently been there, with 24 questions in the verbal section, 20 questions in DILR and 22 questions in quant. Now the other thing is, this 2 hours is split into 40 minutes each. So your first 40 minutes, you're basically taking the VARC section, and then you jump over to DILR for the next 40 minutes, and then quant for the last 40 minutes. You cannot move between sections, or if you finish 5 minutes before, you can't say that, oh, I finished verbal in 35 minutes, can I start my DILR early? It's going to be that 40 minutes. The marking scheme in CAT is +3 for every correct answer and a -1 for every incorrect answer. This is in case of multiple choice questions. Most of the 66 questions in CAT are going to be multiple choice questions. But a few questions will be what are called short answer or type in the answer questions. Now, you don't need to type in a word or a sentence here. It's going to be some number. So you can have a quant or a DILR question where you don't have options and you need to punch in the right answer. And in the verbal front, you can have jumbled paragraphs or odd one out where we don't get options. We'll basically need to type in the answer. Now, if you're wondering what are jumbled paragraphs or odd one out, I'm going to be shooting another video where I'm going in detail into, what's the syllabus of the CAT exam. Lots more planned. So definitely subscribe if you haven't. But your marking scheme is going to be +3 for every correct answer and -1 for every incorrect answer, which is an MCQ, or 0 for any short answer, which is incorrect. Now, this might surprise you, but not if you've been following our channel for long. 99 percentile, which essentially means that you're in the top 1%, which is usually a target percentile for most of you who will be looking to get into the IIMs. In CAT 2023, 99 percentile was only 75 marks out of 198 marks. In CAT 22, it was 83 out of 198 marks. Both of these years, the CAT exam was considered to be pretty high difficulty, which is why the score which was required for a 99 percentile is less than 40% or somewhere around that. In CAT 2021, which was more of a medium difficulty CAT, 97 out of 198 marks was enough to get us the 99th percentile. But if you see in all of these cases, the 99th percentile is less than 50% marks. It is not even close to 80, 90 or 100% marks, right? So this exam is very different from a board exams or a college exams. Board exams, I'm sure a lot of you guys have scores which are much higher than this 40 or 50%. But here in CAT, getting somewhere around 40% marks is actually cause for celebration. Now, who's eligible to take the CAT exam? The only must-have requirement which is there is you should have scored 50% or equivalent in your college scores. So if you've not finished your college, let's say you're in your pre-final year, they'll consider your scores till this time. And of course, you've got to ensure that in your final year also you keep to these scores. In certain reservation categories, the score does dip down to 45% as well. But as you can see, this is the only thing you require. Now, why I'm emphasizing on this is, I've heard a lot of people who are worried about their ECADs, especially if it's a little bit on the lower side. And, people feel that, oh, I might not get calls for IIMs or can I take CAT? Now, the only thing you need is this minimum score and that's it. And we'll also be talking about profile, ECADs, work experience, and what are the things which are required. Now, last thing, who can take the CAT exam? You need to either be in your final year of college, or you could have graduated and you could be working. You could be working for any number of years, but typically the sweet spot for an Indian MBA is anywhere in the 0 to 5 years of work experience. If you have more than that, probably an exec MBA, which is a 1 year program, is something which you should consider, or you can even look at taking GMAT and going overseas for an overseas MBA, because the work experience required for B schools which are equivalent to IIMs or better than IIMs will be starting somewhere in the 5 to 6 years of work experience. Sometimes you might require a lot more. I, in fact, already have a video as to who should take CAT and who should take GMAT, and I'll link that for you as well if you have work experience and you're curious about it. Now, once you've taken the CAT exam, the ball is in the IIMs court. Most IIMs will require that you have a minimum overall percentile as well as minimum sectional percentiles. For those of you who are in the general category, the minimum sectional percentiles typically fall somewhere in the 70 to 85 percentile, depending on different IIMs. There is IIM Rohtak, which doesn't have a minimum sectional percentile, just an overall percentile. And there are a lot of other B schools as well, which don't have a minimum sectional cutoff. But the sectional cutoffs themselves are not too high in terms of the marks which are required. For example, in CAT 2023, getting 3 to 4 questions right in quant itself was sufficient to clear the sectional percentile for quant, because the quant section was a little tougher. So that's the beauty of having a percentile and not just a score, because if the exam is easy, the marks required for your overall and your sectional percentiles go up. But if the exam is tough, then even a lower score will get you a similar percentile. So Vignesh, for example, he's got 99.98 percentile in CAT 2023, and that's with just shy of 120 marks. But in CAT 2021, for him to get 99.98 percentile, he required 141 marks. So same percentile, different marks, because there's a different difficulty level. The number of questions, timing, everything else was the same. It was just that CAT 2023 was tougher than CAT 2021. Now, when it comes to the IIM shortlisting process, now provided you have met the minimum overall and the sectional percentile, your CAT score becomes the primary criteria for you to be shortlisted. This weightage can be anywhere typically from around 40 to 50% all the way to 100% for multiple IIMs. And this, by the way, is true of a lot of other B schools as well, where they only consider your CAT score. Now, aside from the CAT score, certain other things which are considered include your academics. So some IIMs will say we will consider only your 10th and 12th scores. Some IIMs will say we will consider your 10th, 12th and your college. Typically, you will be given marks out of 10, or it could max be 15, where let's say if you've got 85%, then it could be 8 points out of 10 or 9 or even 10 points, depending on what the scoring pattern is for that particular IIM. Along with that, work experience is also considered. This is typically considered up to 4 years. Now, many IIMs say that, even if you have 1, 2, 3 months, we will consider it. The weightage, of course, the score that you will get will be a little bit on the lower side. Some institutes will say that you need a minimum of 6 months, or IIM Ahmedabad even says that, you need a minimum of 1 year. Reason for this is they feel that, you need to work a little bit for you to actually gain some experience out of that. But typically, the maximum score which will be given will be somewhere around 4 years. For some, it can be 3 or 5 years. Of course, these things can change every year. But the 0 to 5 years is, if you ask me, the sweet spot for an Indian MBA. If you have no work experience, it doesn't matter, because like I said, your CAT score is the most important. I personally was a fresher when I got into IIM Lucknow, and every IIM has a fair number of freshers or people with less than 1 year of work experience. Somewhere up to 5 years of work experience, the 2-year MBA course makes sense. If you have more work experience, maybe an executive MBA, or perhaps something like studying in an ISB or taking GMAT and going overseas, are also aspects that open up for you, and you might consider those to be better than the 2-year work experience. I do have a video on whether you should do an MBA in India or overseas, so I'll link that for you, especially for those of you who have work experience and you want to consider it. But coming back to our shortlisting process, another thing which many of the IIMs consider is your diversity factor. So this will include academic diversity, which is where points are typically awarded to anyone who's a non-engineer or perhaps is coming from a non-science background. Certain institutes like IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Calcutta particularly get into it a little bit more into detail, splitting it into science and engineering, commerce, humanities. There are these multiple criteria which are there, which they've listed out on their website. And another thing which is looked at from a diversity perspective is gender diversity, where points are awarded to females and those from the transgender category. Now, typically the weightage for diversity will be somewhere around 5 to 10 points again. And some IIMs will look at academics, some will look at gender, some will look at both, and some even award you 10 points if you have either, right? So if you are a male commerce student or you're a female engineer, in either case also, there's one or two IIMs where they say we'll straight up give you the points. Couple of other things which can also be counted is certifications. Now, this will not include just any certification which you've taken, but something like a CA where there's considerable work which has been put in. And obviously, anybody doing an MBA having a CA final is something which adds a lot of value. Another thing which certain IIMs like IIM Kozhikode they consider is which college you are from. So your college NIRF ranking or your university is something on the basis of which you could get a few more points. But again, it's important for me to state here that your CAT score followed by your academics are the important criteria. One more thing which will have an impact is if you're coming under some reserved category, because in IIMs, as in all government institutions, you do have reservation. So there'll be certain seats which are set aside for those from the general category, and then you have EWS, NCOBC, SC, ST, PWD, and so on. So this is something which is listed out in the IIM CAT website. So if you fall under a reserved category, I'll put the link to that in the description so that you can check that out as well. Now, once you've cleared the overall and the sectional cutoffs, and then your composite score is enough for you to get the shortlist, then your final selection process starts. And the most important thing out here is your personal interview. Typically, the PI score has the highest weightage when it comes to the final selection, because that's where they are subjectively getting to know you, right? While your CAT score is an objective score where you're getting points, here they are interacting with you, they're engaging, they're understanding, are you the right fit for the institute, what sort of manager will you be, and things like that. So this has a pretty high weightage. The next thing which you have, and in terms of sequence, is actually something which you typically is done before your personal interview. But the weightage for this is a little bit lower. That's your written ability test. So there are different names: written ability test, analytical writing test, and so on. But typically every IIM will have this where they'll give you a topic, they'll give you a time, perhaps a word limit, and you need to basically write it out. Now, again, I do have a video on what are potential VAT topics, how should you prepare, how should you structure it. So I'll put that as well in the description if you want to know more. One or two institutes will also have an extempore. Currently, at the time that I'm shooting, IIM Indore and IIM Rohtak have had it. So this is where you're given a topic, you'll be given say about a minute to think and a minute and a half to speak. This is usually something which is conducted during the interview, maybe in between, or could be just at the end of it. Again, like VAT, the points for this, if it is separate and not considered to be part of your personal interview, then it will not be that high. Your personal interview will have the higher weightage. And another thing which is typically considered is your overall composite score, which is your CAT score, as well as all of the other criteria which the IIM looked at to shortlist you, or they could just take your CAT score into consideration. And this again is why the CAT score is really important, because it is considered in two places: your shortlisting as well as your final selection. Now, when do all these happen? So the last Sunday of November is when you have your CAT exam. It occurs once a year. You cannot take it multiple times, which is again why we recommend that you should take multiple exams. So CAT, SAT, SNAP, NMAT, maybe the MBA entrance test that your state has. So take a bunch of these. Of course, the national exams are the ones which have the highest payoff when we look at the institutes. But if you're taking multiple exams, then you're not just dependent on one exam. Once your CAT exam is done, the results and the shortlists will come out in December to Jan. So typically in a week after CAT, we immediately get our response sheet. We know which answers are right, which are wrong. And you can actually come on to mockat.com and you can actually use a percentile predictor to estimate what is the percentile that you will get. Sometime in December is when you can expect to get your CAT scorecard, where you get your overall and your sectional percentiles. And then in January is when you can expect to start getting your shortlists. The next step would be your VAT PI, which typically occurs in the Jan to March time. Some institutes could have it in April itself, but most will be in the Feb-March time. These could be offline, especially for the top IIMs. So Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, Lucknow, Kozhikode, Indore have generally had offline processes over the last couple of years. Or you could also have an online process. And then once this is done, May and June is when you can expect to get your final selection. And then you will have your joining somewhere, in mid to end June. And hopefully by this time next to next year, if you're taking CAT 2024, you're getting into an IIM or an other top B school. Now, I would consider these to be the most important takeaways for this video. Your CAT score is the most important criteria. It typically has the highest weightage, can be up to 100%, and is usually considered in your final selection as well. Remember that for you to score well in this exam, it's very different from the way you've prepped for your school or your college exams. The marks required are lower, but that's because the exam is really conceptual. It's more of, logical reasoning, not formulaic, no vocabulary, grammar, your test taking strategy. There's a lot of aspects which come in here which we haven't had in our board or a college exams. And that's why you need the right preparation to crack this exam. One reason why the marks required for 99 percentile are in that 40 to 50% range, along with, time limit, negative marks and all, is because I do feel that a lot of people don't prepare the right way, especially because the syllabus is pretty similar to our what we've had in school. So the right preparation, preferably if you can go for guided preparation by people who have high percentiles, people who've cracked the exam, is what will really help you to crack it. Definitely high quality content, mocks, live classes. These are things which go a long way in you cracking this exam and getting into not just an IIM, one of the top IIMs. So all the best to you.